Okay, so welcome to this episode of my podcast, Happy Hacks. This is my episode where I have promised you that I'm going to tell you all about my journey with chronic pain, and then that developed into chronic pain and autoimmune disease. You guys are asking me so many questions, quite rightly. This is what you've got to do to get better, I've discovered. You've got to just never stop trying to find an answer. So because I get so many different questions all the time, and obviously it's quite an in-depth thing to talk about. I mean, as you'll find in this podcast, I have done so many things out of which I don't know what really has made me better. I can hazard a guess, but I have no proof as to what the most important things were. So it's always quite a long answer. So I thought it'd be really good to get it all in a podcast, so that it's just documented and people can send it to people that it might help, or if whenever anybody asks me, I can send them here. Why am I telling you that? You don't need to know that. So let's get going. So chronic pain for me started in 2011. Hang on, I'm just thinking, should I be trying to do an Instagram live so that people can ask me questions at the same time? Let me just see if I can having trouble with starting your live video. I don't know why that would be. Okay, that's fine. So I've started recording it anyway. We'll just see. I don't know. Right. Okay. So for people who are listening to this on audio, I am recording this on video as well, so I can upload it to YouTube. So hopefully, again, it will reach more people and hopefully help more people. So I have, because I've only just started doing this, I have a terrible habit of not telling the people who are only listening what I'm doing. When I'm doing things that only people who are watching me can understand. So apologies for that. So anyway, back to the beginning. 2011. I'm 10 weeks pregnant with my second baby. I had 2 children. Stopped after the pain. And so I'm only 10 weeks pregnant and I get this terrible pain in my pelvis. I'd heard lots of other mum friends say that they'd had this thing called SPD, symphysis pubis dysfunction. I've had it described to me in a lot of different ways from chiropractors and physios and doctors. Essentially, it is where your pelvic bone at the front are 2 bones that sort of fuse together, and there's a problem with that. I've been told that it's moving around. I've been told it can't possibly move around. I've been told that there's a triangular piece of ligament that connects those 2 bones, and that gets completely worn away. I've been told that can't possibly get worn away. Who knows what SPD really is, right? But that's what I was told that I had, and that it was extremely unusual to have it at just 10 weeks pregnant, because obviously you don't have a bump yet, you don't have baby weight, and SPD is usually something you get at the very end of your pregnancy, in the last month or so, when you have a lot of baby weight, a lot of the relaxin hormone pumping through your body, and things can get a little bit too givey, if you know what I mean, givey. Yeah, you can become a bit too flexible because your body's getting used to all the relaxin hormone, which makes you more flexible for birth. So I was told it's really unusual that you've got this at 10 weeks pregnant. And the reason that you've got this unusual case is probably because you're hypermobile in a lot of your joints. And basically the usual thing, there's nothing we can do to help you. And always the answer is that I found, from all these different doctors and things, not from every single one, but from the majority, is just stop doing what causes the pain. It's like, but what if walking causes the pain? What if sitting causes the pain and standing? And so at that point, it wasn't so bad. It was like, you can't push a trolley in the supermarket anymore. That uses a lot of abdominal power, and your pelvis and stuff. And certainly don't walk as little as possible. So that's not so bad when you're pregnant and trying to sort of take it easy and take care of yourself anyway. But the next sort of following 5 years, that pain never went away. And I'd been to the physio several times, I'd found chiropractors, and sometimes it would kind of ease a tiny bit, but it never got better. And I just lived with it because there was sort of, you can have 1 or 2 referrals on the NHS for physio. I paid as much as I could for chiropractor fees, but because nothing was really actually solving it, I just gave up and ended up just accepting it because it wasn't that bad at that point. I could still walk at that point. I would be in pain, but I couldn't sort of, if I was, I haven't run for a bus ever really since I was a child, but they said it's the kind of thing that you can't run for a bus now. You can't just suddenly dash across the road if the traffic's free. That was about as much as I was restricted. So I was kind of okay with that. And I think just busy raising 2 small kids, a baby and, a toddler, and then, small children as they grew up through those 5 years. And I think when you've kind of, all doors are closed and it's not that bad, you do just kind of get on with it. Then all of a sudden, I've got notes down here, so if I keep looking down, it's because I'm making sure that I'm trying to tell you it in the right order, because the perfectionist in me feels like it's very important to get the dates right, when probably you just want to know how you got better. But I feel like the full story is probably helpful, so sorry, you're going to get it. So 5 years later, in May of 2016, it's March 2019 now, so just to give a bit of an idea of timescales, how long things, not being able to walk lasted and all that kind of thing. I'm going to give you some dates in case it helps. So May 2016, this niggly pain that I'd had for 5 years turns into an all-out debilitating pain like that, just overnight. I just got up one morning. I think it wasn't even like woke up and had it. I think I was just walking in the playground to pick up my children, and I was like, that pain is suddenly really, really bad. And I'd done a thing where I'd been on a, what are they called? A buggy, where it's a bicycle and 2 people cycle at the front and you throw your kids in the back. I'd done that the week before. And again, as part of the whole, you can't run for a bus, you can't run or anything. I'd always been told, don't like push a trolley and don't ride a bike. That's all pelvis going on. So because my husband had to leap out to save our, however old he was, 3-year-old who was on his own buggy and was just, having trouble, I then got stuck in this buggy with our baby and decided to cycle. It was like 3 revolutions on this bike of this massive heavy buggy, up a hill and round a corner just to get out of the passing traffic. And I just wonder whether it was just literally that was just too much. I don't know. I've never lingered that much on why did it just suddenly go from 20% pain to like 100 and then stay at it. That's all I know that happened. And I guess when I talk to doctors, they're all usually about like, let's try and fix this, rather than, actually one doctor was, let's try and fix this, as you'll find out in my story. Most doctors were, just live with this, why are you bothering me? So it never really came up as to how it started. It's just, right, that's what happened. So that's what happened. Then for the next 9 months, I literally had to lie flat. So difficult to describe pain, isn't it? But essentially, I couldn't do much. I would find that I would have this like allowance of maybe 45 minutes to an hour every day, where if I'd like rested all night, obviously, and gone easy during the day, I would have maybe 45 minutes to an hour where I could just walk around on crutches or hands on the wall kind of thing, to get around the house and, just slowly try and like open the oven, get food in it, run baths with the children, that kind of thing. So I very quickly found myself in a situation where, in order to be able to look after my children and feed them when they got in from school and read to them and all sort of the very basics that you can do with your kids, I would have to lie flat all day. Because if I went around trying to clean or trying to do art or that kind of thing, I would just be in all-out pain by the end of the day. And I just couldn't risk that because, you've got to look after your kids. And I wanted to, give them as much normality as possible and not frighten them. It was a really, really, really tough time. That was probably the darkest time. My youngest, let's see, when did he start school? It was then, wasn't it? 2016. Yes, my youngest started school that September. And I couldn't get him there. And I had to ask friends to take him to school and to pick him and his brother up, and he'd get really upset because he wouldn't know which mum was going to be helping me that day. I wouldn't know whether I could, some days I was able to. I was like, right, okay, the pain's not so bad right now, I'm going to drive. And obviously I didn't drive in a dangerous manner. Obviously, I wouldn't do that. It'd be ridiculous on top of everything else. But, if the pain was less and I was like, okay, I can get to the car. Fine. I can get to the car park. I can, on my crutches, get to the playground. So it was very much up and down for these 9 months. And during these 9 months, I went to the doctor. When I left it till probably 3 months of living like this, till I finally went to the doctor, because I'm not a person that likes going to doctors. And explained everything. And I was like, what do you think it is? What tests should we do? And it was just a case of, well, just get on with this. I'll get you some really, really heavy painkillers. I was like, I don't really want heavy painkillers. And actually, I've forgotten when I was writing out the timeline here on all my notes. At some point, I was told, and it might have been then, to have steroid injections in my pelvis. And I had those and it did nothing. And it must have been that I must have gone back and said, look, I'm no better off 6 months into this. I've been lying flat now for 6 months. I've had the steroid injections. It's not working. And I was told, oh, you need some more steroid injections. And, and they even put them in the wrong place. They said that they thought it was coming from what are those joints called at the bottom of your back, either side? SJ? Might come back to me. So I was told that I needed them in the right, I think it was called SIJ joint or something. And they didn't put them there. They put them somewhere completely different. I can't even remember. It's just ridiculous. But of course, absolutely no release from the pain. So I'm back at the doctor's for a second time now, and they're saying, look, I don't know why you're here. We've given you your injections, and we've told you to go to the pain clinic and go on these really, really heavy painkillers. And I was like, I don't want to go on the painkillers. I just want to have some tests to try and find out what this is. Can we try and find out what it is and then treat that, or try and combat that rather than just trying to treat the symptoms? And I know that, really heavy pain medication you can become addicted to, and then eventually it stops working and your pain gets worse. So how is that your only answer here? Like, I'm just asking for some tests. I wasn't that eloquent back then or assertive. I don't know how I would have said it, but basically when they said to me, we will not do any tests to try and find out what this is, because you're trying to diagnose pain in that area of the body is the hardest area of the body to diagnose pain. So you just need to accept this is your life now. And actually, I was going to say at that point, I probably said, okay, thank you, rather than what I just said previously. I think actually I said thank you like the first time about the injections, when I was thinking, it's not what I want. And then this time when I was told, just accept this is your life now. I remember the doctor said, I don't really know why you're here. And it seems like you don't think you're being listened to. Like, I'm not being listened to. I want some tests. I had a panic attack in the waiting room after that because I wasn't being listened to. And again, just told, we're not helping you. Like, we have helped you. We've told you to go on heavy medication. I then ended up, it got so bad this one day that my husband had to rush me to A&E because the pain was, I don't know, I remember crying for hours this one night because the pain was just that unbearable. And I think as well, just on an emotional level, I was broken. I could almost get a bit emotional just remembering how dark those times were. Went to A&E and was given these really heavy pain meds. And they did barely anything. I wouldn't even say they took the edge off the pain. They dulled it a tiny bit, but the pain was still ridiculous. I was in a wheelchair, and that had always been my worst nightmare, because I've had back problems. I suppose to back up, I've had back problems since I was 14. Started getting feeling like my back's gone out slightly from 14. And I was told, it's just growing pains and that kind of thing. And then by the time I was 24, a rheumatologist said, you're actually hypermobile in a lot of your joints in your back. And I was given the worst advice ever, which was, don't try to bend. Never lift things. Just try to sort of just take good care of it, which I've since been told by like every other physio is terrible advice. Trying to get all stiff is awful. So I tried to get all stiff for years. So then just to leap back to where I got to, A&E, went on these terrible, well, they are terrible, really full-on painkillers, took them home with me. By that, early hours of the morning, I'm just giggling on the sofa in my own world and saying to my husband, this is not the answer. how they can think this is appropriate behaviour for a mother who was sole carer of 2 young children Monday to Friday, because my husband was and still does work in London every day of the week and works very long hours. We are ships in the night, unfortunately, at the moment, and have been for a very long time. So it really was, from Monday morning to Friday night, me doing it all, which would be insane to then be literally off my head on pain medication. So I then have an idea. At this point, I am about 8 to 9 months into lying flat most of the time and getting nowhere with my GP. And I remember someone said something to me about this amazing locum GP who can give you, referrals, because they don't have the same restrictions that GPs do, because they're locums. So I thought, well, I saw this guy like 2 years ago. So if I try and get an appointment with him, maybe he'll listen to me and give me some tests. So I phoned up, and I had to be a little bit clever because I was sort of told you can only see him if it is a follow-on appointment for an existing thing that's going on. So I said, well, it is. And got an appointment with him. And he was amazing, because I walked in and I said, I feel like from the last appointment I had where I walked out and had a panic attack, and another GP came out of his office and was like, what's wrong? This is terrible. And he'd seen me, he knew me a little bit, because I like I've said, I hardly go to the doctors. And he'd even praised me over how I don't pull my children in for everything every 2 seconds, and how he always sort of said I'm a bit of a sane mum, and that's really good. And I was like, look, that I am not like some person that comes to doctors all the time, but I'm not being listened to, and I just want some tests. And he went and saw my usual GP. I was like, we've got to sort this out. I'm going to go and have a word, and let's sort this out. Let's get you some tests. They must have misunderstood you. And then he literally walked out and was like backing away from me, like, yeah, apparently it's all in hand. See ya. Whatever this other GP said, I do not know. So with that in mind, I go to this locum appointment, and I say, this is what's happened. I feel like they want me to think I'm going mad. I think they want me to think that they think I'm making all of this up, because they're not taking it seriously. And he said that you are the 3rd appointment today, and you are the 3rd person to say exactly that. There is an issue going on here. So that was obviously really reassuring. And he said, and what's more, if you were my wife, I would be giving you all of these tests. So let's get them done now. Go straight to the hospital. I mean, we were looking at leukemia, rheumatoid arthritis, all sorts of scary stuff. And he's like, and I would want you to have the results by the weekend, which you will do. Thank goodness for him. So I have these blood tests, and it comes back. The autoimmune thing was flagged, and somehow I think it was because of that I then got a referral to a rheumatologist, and the rheumatologist said we need to do a full body scan. The thing where you have to drink the dye, or they put the dye in your arm and they do that thing. So then, as I'm having this body scan, I'm getting all ready on the go into the tunnel. A nurse comes over to me and just says really quietly, if this gets you no answers whatsoever, you need to be really firm with your doctor, with your GP, and say, I need you now to look at my nervous system. That's the next layer down. And she said, because I've been in a similar position to you, because you get chatting to these nurses, don't you, when you're having all these things and you're there for 4 hours and you're in and out the tube. And so I knew all of her story. She knew all of my story. And she said, it's very similar to mine, and I'm better. And she said, and it's because it was to do with my nerves. My nervous system wasn't right. So she said, you've got to be really, really strong with them. They've got to look at that next. So I get all the results back just before Christmas, and which year are we in? 2016. Yeah. And I'm told, right, so the good news is it's none of the things that we were looking for. It's not leukemia. It's not this. It's not even rheumatoid arthritis, even though you have this immune system flag that you've got some ANAs that are really, really high. I still can't remember what ANAs are, but I think it was those that were giving the impression that I must have an autoimmune problem. So, it's literally, it's not any of the things on my list, so we can't help you. And I'm like, can you not now tell me where I need to go? So we've established that. We know that this is an issue. What next? He's like, you have to go back to your GP. I don't know. And I was like, right, look, I was told I've got to be really firm with you. Can we look at my nervous system? Can we look at the next layer down? And he was like, I have no idea who would help you with that. Sorry, you'll have to go back to your GP. Obviously, I felt like, this isn't what I want to hear. This is going to be such a battle. But amazingly, I, all the way through this journey, had always been very open about what was going on with my friends. And, anybody, it would come up, wouldn't it? I'm on crutches in my, playground, and I'm clearly not on the school run that much. So anybody that would ask me, I wouldn't shy away from the conversation. I'd be like, yeah, I don't know the answer to this. This is the situation I'm in. I'm trying to find answers. And as I'm having that conversation with one of my really, really close friends, this shows just how much you have to keep talking, because one of my closest friends that knew everything about this unlocked the key for me, even though she'd known about it for months. And it was simply the little magic thing of me saying, the nurse told me I've got to look at nerves next. That's the next day down. And she was like a light bulb. I know somebody that had a problem with nerves and awful pain after children. And she went to see this amazing specialist physio, and she was fixed. And I'm like, in fact, I wasn't like, give me the number. She was like, phone her now. I'm knocking over the plant. But it was a moment. And so doesn't that just show how you do have to talk, and you have to just be relaying all these things? Because it was the magic word of nerves that got the connection in her brain of, this might help you. So just check my notes, make sure I've remembered to say everything. Yeah, so I start to see the specialist physio. I'm just going to turn this off now. Just realised I don't need another video of me not looking at the camera. So I see this specialist physio. So she is a specialist physio in chronic pelvic pain. Who knew? My GP didn't know. And this amazing physio is only an hour away from my house. And there's at the time, I believe there was only one more person in the country that was doing this, who was in Harley Street in London. And there would have been no way in my current physical pain and debilitating state that I could have got to a train station, sat on a train. I mean, I'm still in pain now, actually, when I sit down a little bit. But my God, the pain then, I couldn't even sit. So sitting on a train would not have worked. So I literally couldn't even got there if I wanted to. But the fact that this was a drive, and I found that it was December the 23rd when I had my first appointment with her. And so it was really cold, and I'd find that I could get my scarf off and sort of stuff it underneath one hip. And that would just alleviate the pain enough to be able to drive completely safely. Again, don't worry. I just would never, I realise when I say things like that, I think, oh my gosh, what was she think? But I would never, ever, there's too many people who have actually died in car accidents for me to ever take that not seriously, that I know. So just wanted to make sure that I would never have done that in an unsafe way. So I would be able to get there with the pain not being so debilitating that it was a problem. And then because I would have to drive such a long way, and this physio was obviously quite rightly so incredibly expensive because she was an absolute specialist and worth every penny, I would then have to get there an hour early. Actually, that's a whole other part of my other story that I tell in talks and stuff about how I wrote my ebook during this time and created passive income. Forget that bit, that wasn't necessary. So I go and see the specialist physio, and she is like, you're a textbook case. And I can't for the life of me remember what the condition was. Overactive was in the word. Something about pelvic. It was about the muscles in your pelvis, which I had no idea. Literally go from your back like a hammock all the way almost to your belly button or something. So I think, if I'm getting this correct, that because I was doing this holding everything tight thing that this blooming a rheumatologist had told me to do, to just never bend and hold everything in, because I had been doing that at that point for 10 years, the muscles in my stomach and my pelvis were as rock solid as a drum. So we had to do trigger release and stuff on my stomach and things to get rid of that. And then also chiropractic clicking and things, because my body wasn't holding these adjustments, as well as physio and all these exercises that I had to do. So I started seeing her at the end of, what would that have been? Yeah, Christmas 2016. So basically 2016 is kind of the year that I couldn't walk. 2017 we're now going into, just as this treatment starts, and this is the year that I started to get better. By May of that year, because I've been going almost weekly, and then I think by May we got to monthly perhaps, I was then beginning to just get that sense of I'm getting my life back. That was when I got offered the studio in the shed that I used to share, and I remember thinking, I am just better enough to be able to consider this, but if I have any kind of decline in my health, I'm going to have to give this up almost straight away. But maybe this is something that will help me to kind of go, look, I've got this now. I've got to get better. Maybe it'll help with my mind. So that's when I got the studio. I was still having flare-ups, every sort of month or two, just constantly throughout that year. In fact, a lot of you, since I did a story today on Oxford Street just now, just coming out of my doctor's saying, oh my goodness, I'm so much better. It's incredible. Now I've got the actual blood tests and to prove that, not to prove, but that support that I really am feeling as good as I am. My symptoms have all calmed down, but I've actually, I was wondering, well, even if my symptoms have calmed down, what if I still have raging autoimmune disease and hypothyroidism? But no, it's all good. But when I did that on the stories earlier, so many people said, oh my goodness, I followed your journey. And I remember the darkest times and how, you documenting being in terrible pain. And yeah, back in 2018. Yeah, what? Hang on. Which year? Yeah, sorry. So I started to be able to walk in May 2017, but by March 2018, it was still constant flare-ups. I mean, my physio told me, when you get better, you expect it to go like that. It will go like that. So you're getting better, but it will be up and down the entire time. And yeah, so even by March 2018, I remember we went to Centre Parks, and we've gone to Centre Parks several times. I absolutely love it there. I love being on a bike and everything. And the last time that I went in March last year, oh my goodness, I was having a flare up at the time. Winter time is always harder. And I mean, I had to spend the whole time on the land train. I had to call the disability people to get me in a van and get me everywhere. People have really followed that journey. There was one time, the last night that we were at Centre Parks, we were there for 3 nights. I was in so much pain that I couldn't do our last night in the subtropical centre. So if you don't know what Centre Parks is, you probably do, but I don't know. It's like in the woods, in cabins, with this incredible indoor water park thing, with rapids and everything. And I absolutely love it, and my children absolutely love it. And my 8-year-old at the time, absolutely loves it, and was so upset on that last night because I was in so much pain I couldn't go. I had to stay back in the villa on my own. But because my husband would be on his own with an 8-year-old that can go down all the flumes and all the rapids and loves it, and a 5-year-old that couldn't do any of that, or a 6-year-old, whatever he was at the time, he was still 5. That meant that my 8-year-old just couldn't go on any of the rides on the last night, and he was devastated. And I remember doing some stories then. I just thought, I just do want to share this side of it, and not always show the positive side, show when it's really, really difficult, because it's a fine line. I only ever want to uplift and inspire people, but I also want to keep it real and show you the horrible sides. But I don't want to show you stuff that makes you feel awful, it makes you think, God, I wish I hadn't watched that, and I feel terrible, thanks. So it's a really, really hard, funny line, and I try to get it right. And so that time, I did come on Instagram stories and just say, like, I think I was just asking for advice, like, help me. Right now, I'm struggling that my son is in pain, and it's because of my physical chronic pain, and I hate this. And you guys came back with such incredible advice. Oh my gosh, when I think of the things that you told me about how I'm ultimately teaching my son to take care of himself as he grows up. Because if I push myself when I'm not well and make myself do things my body can't do, what am I teaching my children? It's not good, is it? You've got to teach your children, you know what, when you're not well, you have to rest and you have to take care of yourself. So lots of you today have been, replying to my story saying, I've watched this whole thing, I'm so happy for you. So I say all that to sort of tell you, give you the correct impression of, I was getting better, but it was like this. I could be doing really well. I've got a studio. I'm actually doing, working again. Great. Oh God, I've gone to Centre Parks and I'm in a disability car the whole time. So I see this specialist physio, and she tells me, we're going to fix you in 3 ways. And she's brilliant. She's like, I work to redundancy. no physio or chiropractor says that. They nearly always say, oh, you should keep doing this forever. And she's a physio and a chiropractor and has a PhD in pelvis something. So yeah, she was like, the 3 ways we're going to fix you. Obviously, the manual stuff, her physio, chiropractor, trigger release, that kind of stuff. The second thing is, she's like, you have to educate yourself on neuroplasticity and on how the brain creates pain and how your brain, your mind, you can, if you're educated in it, you can bring your pain down yourself. It might not be that you can get rid of it because you've absolutely got an issue, which is going to create pain, but you have the capacity to bring it from a 10 to maybe a 5. Might not get it to a 0, but you might be able to bring it to a 5. And obviously that is worth doing, because then at a 5, you can kind of get around a bit. And the third thing that she told me I had to do is meditate. So, onto the explain pain stuff, I suppose. The pain thing is, I was told to read a book called Explain Pain by Professor Lorimer Moseley and David Butler. 2 guys from the other side of the world. Is it Australia or New Zealand? I can't remember. Amazing guys that are experts in chronic pain. And so I read this book, and then they brought out another book called The Protectometer. It's sort of like the Explain Pain handbook, and it really sort of the Explain Pain book. It's big, it's scientific. It was incredibly hard to get my head through, especially when I was in a lot of pain, but it was worth it. I would say it's still worth educating on that if you can. And then this Protectometer handbook is a really great way of extending all that knowledge and helping you to put that into practice. So I did that, and she did her stuff, and I completely ignored the whole got to meditate thing. I was always like, yeah, no, I will. Totally intended to, but I let a whole year go by before I actually started it. Now, let's just check our notes, because I'm not sure if I've missed anything. Yeah, so I'm doing all that with the physio. And then we get to, what point did I stop seeing the physio? I haven't written that down. I can't remember. Maybe it doesn't matter. So 2018 we're into now. So yeah, 2017 is literally seeing the physio for nearly the whole year and getting flare-ups that could be really bad at times. And by the end of the year, I was a lot better. So we get to 2018, last year. And I have a random blood test for something. And it comes back that because whatever I went to the doctor about, different GP, she said, this is sometimes an indication that you might have hypothyroidism. So we need to check that. And I had hyperthyroidism for 6 months when I was, well, what would that have been? 10 years ago. And I was told that I had really high antibodies. And that was an indication that one day I would go hypothyroid. If only I had known what that meant. I didn't know what that meant. I just went, oh, okay, fine, that'll happen in my 50s or 60s and whatever. Because I was young and whatever. What I didn't realise is that when you have high antibodies, you guys probably know this, or maybe you don't, your body is attacking itself. And that, on the NHS, they won't treat you and they won't treat any problem with your thyroid until it's destroyed. So you have to do it privately if you want to get treatment and feel better earlier. And they'll tell you that you shouldn't do that. That there's nothing wrong with you, even though there's so much wrong with you. And in my case, I had terrible brain fog, absolutely exhausted, pain. So I get told, yeah, you have hypothyroidism. Blood test came back, you've got it. But we'll only refer you to somebody in 3 months' time when you have the test again that confirms it. So, go away and continue as normal. Well, I didn't go away and continue as normal. I went away and thought, I'm going to obviously Google this. Is there any way I can stop myself from having hypothyroidism? Is there anything I can do holistically or on a nutritional level? I was thinking more like vitamins and supplements and things, because I didn't want to go on medication. The whole, reason that when I was told, oh, you have hyperthyroidism 10 years ago, the whole reason I kind of never did anything about that, and especially as I got better, like within 6 months on its own with no medication, was that I'd heard that if you have hypothyroidism, you have to be on medication for life. And I had this real belief that I never would go on medication. I don't want synthetic stuff in my body. I don't want added things. I really believe that the body can heal itself. And yeah, so I've lost my train of thought. Let me just check my notes. Yeah, so I go away from this appointment where I'm told you've got hypothyroidism, but we're not going to do anything about it. I've got a phone call now. No, you know I'm busy. Why can't I turn him off? Declined. Oh, declined. I don't decline people very often. I'm going to turn this off because I know this person will constantly phone me and we're doing a podcast. So I research all of it, all this sort of holistic stuff, like how is there any way that you can do things that then means that when you go back and have that test, you don't have hypothyroidism? And I discover things. I discover that if your iodine and selenium levels are extremely low, those things, now I might get the sciencey bit wrong here, but something along the lines of they are responsible for carrying thyroid cells or something like that around your body. And so if they're very, very low, it can't be moved around your body. So upping those can help. So in all my research, I then discovered there was such a thing as a functional doctor who will try to treat you from a holistic point of view, i.e. no meds. Anything else, diet changes, supplements. What are the other ways that they can treat you? Oh, I can't think, but all kind of anything that's not medication, ideally. So I interviewed a few different ones, and then I decided to go with this particular one because she is a GP and a functional doctor at the same time. So I thought, well, that's great. So I'm going to get an unbiased view. She's going to really tell me if I have to have medication, but also if there's any way I can't, and she knows all the, to get away with not going on medication, if there's any way to not do that and treat it from a holistic point of view, she can also do that for me. So I book in to see this lady, and when she looks at all my things and these ANAs that had come up, a year before then, I think that must have been, she was like, you have an autoimmune disease. You have Hashimotos, whatever it's called, thyroiditis. You've got Hashimotos. You have an autoimmune disease. This is crazy that the system that we have that, that you can't get treated or even diagnosed. So her answer was, you will do a load of tests, we'll see what you're low on, and that you need to change your diet. You need a completely different lifestyle. You need an anti-inflammatory lifestyle. So we did all the tests to just discover what intolerances I had and how bad everything was. And the answer came back, you need to exclude all dairy and not just all gluten, but all grains. Now, when she said that to me, I just thought that can't be very many things. And then I was like, oh, wow, it's not just your pasta and your wheat and your bread. It's rice, it's oats, it's corn. So then that's not just, cornflakes, actual rice, oats, it's, it just suddenly becomes almost everything. It's corn flour, it's rice flour. So even if you get like a really good organic, sausage, it's probably going to have some kind of rice powder or corn flour or something in it. So yes, I'm told you need to do this. Also, my iodine and selenium were rock bottom, as were a multitude of other things. We discovered that my adrenals were absolutely almost non-existent. One of them was absolutely on zero. Another one was just literally, just slightly above zero. And that I'd had an enormous adrenal crash at some point as a result of trauma or stress. And that when that happens, the body generally can't recreate all of those hormones again. They need to be put in for a while to get your body to do whatever it should be doing on its own again. So that I'd have to go on some sort of adrenal medication. So she's really sorry. She's like, I really want to, I know you're here to be hoping, and I'm here hoping that I can treat you from a holistic point of view, but actually you do need some medication. You do need T4 medication, and we did T3 for a little bit when I needed that to begin with as well. So I go on this anti-inflammatory diet, and I wouldn't say quickly, but I've been doing it now for 9 months, and I'd say consistently the pain has reduced. And I've got better. And she did say, my antibodies by then were like raging. And not all of them. My TPOs were very high, if you know what that means. But like my globulin was like, crazy high. And the TPOs I still have TPO, thyroid. No, can't think how you say it. Parasite or something like that. Those still are high. So, I'm losing my train of thought. Sorry. Let's check the notes. Yeah, so I just wanted to mention now at this point that when I'm told you've got to give up all grains and all dairy, I just think the timing is quite interesting here. And I really am a believer that life is actually, and it's only been since all of this that I've come to have this sort of belief. And since I've had this belief, it only continues to be reaffirmed in my life through things that happen, but that life is always working for you and that the timing of things are always perfect. And I do find it interesting that just 6 months before I got told, right, you've now got to cut out all this stuff, I had, after a good long year or so and a lifetime of wanting to get this fixed, decided I would go and see a coach to sort out my disordered eating. I didn't have like a crazy eating disorder, but my eating wasn't right. I was just, at the mercy of crazy, cravings. And willpower was non-existent. And as a result, I just lived. I lived to eat. I lived for the next meal. I would think about the next meal all day. And if I bought something like some chocolate whatevers, maybe for the kids, we had this thing, I remember doing it on Instagram stories, how like on a Friday night, my boys and I would watch George Clark's Amazing Spaces with popcorn, and I'd get these little bags of chocolate buttons and we'd have some of those sprinkled on top. And I'd buy, they'd arrive on the shop on a Monday and I'd be like, I don't know, I'm not going to eat the whole bag right now. And I'd throw them on top of my fridge up really high, and I'd be up on a step ladder getting them down. And I would always have eaten the full thing, within a couple of days, sometimes within a day. And it was never binge eating. It was just constantly going back, telling myself, it's just one more, it's fine. And also telling myself, I love myself so much. I'm so good at the self-love thing because I'll let myself eat all these chocolate things, like totally not acknowledging I have an issue, and if I'm doing something that is causing my body pain, that's not self-love. So it's very interesting that I'd got through all of that. In 6 weeks, my coach Jacqueline Hurst had just fixed that part. She is incredible. Her knowledge on this subject is absolutely amazing. It's like I've never ever had anybody talk to me about food in the way she has. I've never seen it in a magazine. I've never read it anywhere. And it's so simple as well. So I, at this point, have no issues with food anymore. No issues with food. So when I get told you can't have this anymore, whilst I did get in the car and cry publicly on Instagram stories about the fact, trying to give the news because people are following my journey and I want to share it to help people, if I can in any way, just through sharing. As I'm sort of talking about, so basically no Chinese, no cake, no normal chocolate. I can only have dark 70% chocolate. No pizza, pizza, Chinese, cake and chocolate. Oh, biscuits. They were my biggies that I loved and lived for. And even though I did cry when I realised I'm actually never going to eat these again, and it just for a second just felt overwhelming, after I'd got over just processing that, I have never, ever been tempted to cheat. I've been doing this for 9 months now, not tempted to cheat. I never look at I look at a pizza and I think, wow, if I was allowed to, I think I'd just eat the lot. I think it's still, the yumminess of it hasn't gone away. But the feeling that I have to control what I do has completely gone. I can look at it and think, yeah, that is delicious. I would want to eat the lot if my body wouldn't react badly if I did. But because I know that if I did that, I'm going to cause myself pain. I'm going to be on the toilet the next day, all day, with agonizing stomach cramps. Is that worth it? And I think because my coach has taught me, re-educated me on what loving yourself and self-love really looks like, it doesn't look like doing it anyway because you love yourself. silly me, it looks like I don't want to cause myself pain. So there's no way I'm tempted to do that. And she's also, put me into a mindset where there are no restrictions around food. This is the most amazing thing, is that I never at any point when I'm not allowed to eat any of those things. I might have used the wrong language initially while I was learning it, but what I was trying to do and what I have done is say to myself, I can eat whatever I want, whenever I want to. I can walk out of here and go and order a Chinese. I can buy a cake on the way home. I can go and eat a bar of chocolate. So moment to moment, I make the choice as to whether I want to do that or not. And I don't even have to think about it. I just don't want to cause myself pain. I don't want to do anything that's going to harm me. And I want to thrive. And I love the fact that now I feel so much better. I haven't had brain fog for a very long time now, good year. And that feels amazing. And there's an amazing woman that I follow on Instagram called Unique Hammond. And she's been through all of this. I mean, worse than mine. She had Crohn's and possibly something else. I can't quite remember. And, she got incredibly sick. And she summed it up really well the other day on Instagram stories where she said, people say, but don't you feel deprived? Don't you feel deprived? You can't have that chocolate cake? Oh, it must be such, deprivation and stuff. And she was like, I have never felt more deprived than when I was sick. So do I feel deprived that I can't eat that chocolate cake? No. And I can totally resonate with that as well. So I was going to say I digress, but no, that's all important stuff for me to share. Yeah, so to that, I'm talking about how last year was the year that I find out I have hypothyroidism, find out I have an autoimmune disease, and my functional doctor said, if you have an autoimmune disease, your body is attacking itself, and we can see from, I don't know what, tests probably, or me describing symptoms, I'm not sure, that you have widespread inflammation. That's going to cause chronic pain. So that's a really important part for me to share, because up until this point, I'm believing my chronic pain is simply down to the fact that I have hypermobile joints, and that pregnancy and the relaxin hormone and everything just tipped that over the edge and created created pain, which then turned into a chronic pain cycle, which was then largely being handled by my physio's advice to do all that stuff and to do the neuroplasticity. So I think all the neuroscience stuff was what was pulling the pain down, as well as the physio things. But it hadn't gone. I was still getting better, but it was still very much up and down. And then at the point that I discover I've actually got an autoimmune disease and I need to treat this, and then my doctor said, you actually might find that the pain completely goes from doing this. That's where the chronic pain then turns into that as well. I'm now treating it from that point of view too, not just from the other thing. So I get rid of grains and dairy. I go on a whole multitude of supplements. So my adrenal supplement, not supplements, actual medication. We discover I have a bunch of intolerances. I was one of those people that believed that people that say they have intolerances just want to be skinny, and they just want to use I can't eat dairy as an excuse to stop the donut tray in the office getting stuffed under their noses, which if people are doing that, I'm like, yeah, you know what, do whatever you need to do to have less hassle in life, fine. But I truly didn't think there was such a thing as intolerances. I thought it was all in the mind. But my blood test came back. I had a whole host of intolerances. Oh my goodness. Coffee, lemon, like lemon, I was drinking lemon water every day. And loads, broccoli, cucumber, pineapple, bananas, as well as my dairy is off the scale. It's like the most that you can be intolerant. I am intolerant to everything in dairy to that extent. So it looks like lattes are never coming back, which is actually fine. And then grains, again, they're pretty high. So I do all of that. Now, there's another part to this story which is going to get a little woo. And that year, in the February, just when, what was going on in February? Yeah, when I had the blood test and I found out about the hypothyroidism, I have a dream at night, which, as I'm dreaming it and I become aware of it, I'm feeling like this isn't normal. This isn't a normal dream. And I don't know what it is. I don't know what to call it. But what I saw happen in the dream, and I had this thing where I became aware that I was not asleep and not awake. And I felt like I was floating on the ceiling. And, oh God, there was all this crazy darkness. And there was almost like a physical representation of fear in this dream, and I've got to turn towards it in this funny dream. And again, it's so not like anything I'd ever experienced. And I'm aware that I feel like I'm floating on the ceiling and that I need to call out to my husband, I'm on the ceiling! Get me down! There's something crazy going on. And as I do start to turn towards this thing in this dream that I'm absolutely terrified of, this darkness, I then see myself in the reflection of a painting that I'm painting in this studio, in my studio. Well, I'm in a studio, and I'm lifted up, and I see in this reflection, suddenly it's like a mirror, that there's all these robes floating all around me, and that I'm lifted away from the darkness. Shivers when I say that. Now, the strange thing that's stranger than all of that, and of course, at that point, I was like, I'm just going to open my eyes. I'm pretty sure I'm going to end up back in my bed. But oh my goodness, it feels like I'm on the ceiling, like this incredible energy being up high. So I open my eyes, and of course, and I feel it. I'm back in my bed. And I hear a voice comes forth, and I hear, go downstairs. So I go downstairs, sit down, and I hear or feel, I can't quite remember, you need to write down and draw everything that you saw in the dream, vision, whatever. Draw it all out, write it all down. And I go to work the next day. And so the main thing that happens in this dream is that I am in a room that I don't recognise with these 3 thin windows. And it's like a studio, but there's stuff everywhere. It's a complete mess. It's like someone's moving out or moving in, or is it student digs and it's just messy? And it's just crazy. And as I'm driving into the studio, and at this point, had I started meditating? I had just started meditating just a few weeks earlier and writing morning pages, aka what Julia Cameron tells you to do in the Artist's Way book. If you are creative, you need to read that book. And again, that was funny how that book came along and how I stumbled into doing morning pages because a friend that I really trust, that I got to know through Instagram, another artist kept telling me, you need to read this book. And so I ordered it for my birthday at the beginning of February. And not even knowing what it was about, not having no clue. And then it tells you to do these morning pages. And actually, sorry, it was the March then that I had this crazy dream. And so from doing the morning pages, I'd been used to connecting to my inner voice and my inner self. So it didn't seem kind of weird to very strongly hear, go downstairs, write it all down. So anyway, I get to driving up to the studio that day, and I hear another thing come forth of, you are going to take so many bin bags home today, your car's going to be full. And I'm like, that is so strange. I have no plans to take any bin bags home. I have no plans to take anything home from my studio. This is so strange. Oh, I just got a weird breeze go past me then. And so I get into my studio, and there is just a different energy. And I just hear, you are going to turn your studio into a sacred space to paint today. Okay. And I just have an absolute knowing I have to get rid of anything which doesn't serve me. So anything that doesn't make me feel absolute joy. And it's so funny because that's what I've gone on to do in this new studio is I only have things on the wall, only have objects and things that absolutely fill me with complete joy and inspiration. There is nothing here that makes me go, I don't really like that, or I don't really like the look of it. It's all beautiful. And this is what I felt led to do. So I do all of this, and at the end of the day, I'm stood in the studio by the area where it was all dark in my dream, and the painting wall where I was lifted up by these robes and stuff. Well, there's robes behind me. It was like I was lifted up by an angel. I'm just going to say it. And I'm going to get shivers now. I look around and I realise this is what the room looked like in the dream. Was that like a vision? What happened in the dream just happened now. And then I noticed that, I don't know why I'd never noticed it before. I have 3 long windows in my studio. So I tell you all that to sort of explain sort of the other part of what happened last year and what is a part of my recovery, is that became, I guess, a spiritual awakening. I've always had faith in God and a belief in God. I went to church for a while back when I was like 15, 16. And then I decided I wasn't really into the whole kind of non-denominational church thing, because it just seemed to there just felt like I was very much sucked in, expected to go all the time and never kind of have any friends outside of church, and I didn't like that. But my sort of relationship with God has always been right there. Didn't need to go to church for it. But this is like a whole different awakening. This was there is something else going on other than just my connection with God. There is something else, and I don't know what it is, but I want to find out more. And this then led me to, just people just came into my life that about other things that then would open up and talk about the law of attraction. I wrote down other things, law of attraction, things, people like Louise Hay, Gabby Bernstein, Marie Folio. There's so many, but just people that have kind of woken up is the term that everyone seems to use. And it does really resonate. That does seem like what it was, that I just realized, like, I've woken up now to what else is going on here, and that my whole do what you love thing that I just feel like I'm called to come here to share became an absolute I get it now. There are ways to tap into knowing what you want to, what you should be doing, and there's a whole other thing around your purpose. Anyway, I feel like I am slightly digressing now. The point being is that what the other things I then started to do, in addition to everything that I've spoken about, which is all very standard, was then look into people like Dr. Joe Dispenza, Louise Hay, and I started to I'm so thirsty. Sorry, I haven't had a drink this whole time. Where have I put my drink? I started to be aware of the concept that it is possible that we create our reality with our thoughts. I'll leave you with that one for a sec. And therefore, like Louise Hay talks about, she believed that now let me say, I don't know if I'm getting this right, because I'm reading like 100 books at once, but something along the lines of, we create all illness in the body is created via our mind, not actual disease. And I've talked about this on Instagram stories before, how, I was talking about it a few months ago, like, I'm open to this, but a lot of people get offended by it and think it's an outrageous thing to say. And I can understand when you take it to the most extreme cases of illness or terrible things happening to people, I can totally understand how people can get offended by that. But me being me, I'm like, I am not going to get offended, because I'm not going to stop until this pain has gone. I am going to get completely better. And so therefore I was like, I'll just accept this. How about I just play at believing it, even if I don't fully believe it, or it sounds cuckoo, or it's a completely crazy concept, and I don't know if I'm comfortable believing this. Let's just try believing it and see if anything good happens. So I'd say now, for the last sort of maybe 5 months or so, I have been exercising everything that I've been learning, because as soon as I had that, whatever you want to call that, dream, and I started writing morning pages, and what was flowing out of my pen was the most incredible, insightful, intelligent, beautiful, poetic advice that I have never heard, and has never been a thought that has come from my brain, but it was coming out of my pen. And when I follow that advice, life just blooms. That's when I started to think, I think there is something to this woo-woo stuff. And so, what have I missed out? Covered all of that. That basically is it. I now just thought that I would go through the takeaways, because I've given you a lot of information. How long have I been talking for? My goodness, an hour. Wow. So you don't have to listen to that back and write down, like, okay, what are all the things she did? I then just wrote them down in bullet points for you. I'm not saying any of this to tell you what to do. I'm not saying what worked, because I don't know what worked, do I? I have no proof. I have this deep feeling inside me that mindset is a huge part of it, because in this sort of, since having that vision, experience, whatever you want to call it, discovering morning pages, discovering my inner voice, realizing, oh my goodness, what I'm seeing everywhere is not all there is. to the human experience. Coming to the, going from thinking, I think people have got a point when they say that we're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're perhaps spiritual beings having a human experience, which to begin with, I was like, that's crazy, but I'm open to it. And now I'm like, I absolutely believe that, given everything that I've experienced since. I've lost my tangent, but basically, I don't know. So I always get like another woo thing, but I get an incredible heat and energy and a zh in my hand quite often when I'm speaking something really kind of, I don't know, really aligning and really truthful for me, my truth, as well as lots of other kind of amazing things. I feel like that's a part of it. I know what my point was earlier. Sorry. It was that in having the spiritual awakening and looking into things like law of attraction, I then stumbled into, and that was a lot from my coach, Jacqueline, mindset and how differently to, your thoughts can create illness. At the same time, learning that your thoughts and your mindset equals, your existence and your happiness, your peace and that kind of thing. And so then, of course, I got into a little bit of like, not so much Tony Robbins. I still keep meaning to like learn his stuff, but people who have learned off Tony Robbins and have similar experiences, knowledge and information to share. So I have just, the whole of 2018 was this incredible learning curve, spiritual awakening, getting to know my inner voice, sharing all of that kind of stuff and continuing to get better. I'm not telling you how to do it. I'm not telling you anything has led to me getting so much better. But basically, I went to my functional doctor last month, which was, I think, almost a year since, 9 months or so since we'd started this treatment. And we went down the symptoms list. Sorry if you've heard this before, but very quickly went down the symptoms list and we looked at the symptoms that I had on my very first appointment 9 months earlier. And there was something like 40 or 50 individual symptoms that I had going on that were quite full on. And then when I filled it out that day, I was like, I've only got 2. I hadn't even realised. Quite often you don't even realise how sick you've been. And she said she sees this all the time. So I was really interested to see, and so I had all my blood drawn. And today was the appointment to get the results. And I was like, will the results match the symptoms coming down and being so much better? And I didn't know what to expect. I had a feeling they would have come down, but my goodness, when I saw her today, we found that one of my antibody levels is 0. I don't have any of those antibodies attacking my body anymore. And then the other one was again halved. Again, it's like 40 or something. So, she did say something along the lines of, it's almost miraculous. It's incredible to go from how high it was to where I am now. So like, you can obviously draw your own conclusions as to what that might be. And of course, none of us know. Is it just the changing of the diet and adding in supplements and boosting my thyroid with thyroid medication? Has mindset had a lot to do with it? What about the whole spiritual stuff? What about the physio and all those sort of things and the neuroscience, which I still practice, the neuroplasticity and that bringing the pain down, because I still continue to have little sneaks of pain. Okay, whilst we're on the kind of the woo stuff, and before I jump into basically these are like the 10 things or whatever it is that I did. One more story, and I've shared this on my podcast before, but in case you haven't heard it and you're here just for the pain stuff, the final thing that I have to share, which is so part of the spiritual side of the pain, was on Christmas Eve of last year. So we're only talking about Christmas Eve, so that's December to January to February, like 2.5 months ago. I had an absolute awful chronic pain flare up that evening of Christmas Eve, and I'd been doing pretty well for quite a long time at that point, and I was just like kind of not outraged exactly, but you know the word, just like, come on, I don't want this. I don't want this on Christmas Eve. I'm busy. I've got stuff to do. I want to enjoy my Christmas. I've got all this food to cook the next day on my feet. And so I stood. I mean, and literally it was so bad. It was the worst it had been in maybe a year. It was hands on the wall, shuffling round. And I've never heard a ding before. Ignore that. And as I am stood in my bathroom doing my teeth, holding on to the sink, and I don't even know whether I can pivot because our toothbrushes and things live behind us on this rack. I think I don't even know, like, I'm holding on, like, can I do this? And I turned round and I had my hands on the sink and my head and my eyes were shut. And I just literally in my head just sort of said, tell me. I can't remember actually what it was. My other podcasts will be better. But from what I can remember, it was something like, what do I need to do? I'm listening. And of course, I have such a connection now with my inner voice that it's not surprising to me when I actually get an answer. Although I wasn't really expecting one. It was just like an outrage, it was like a burst of energy. And I heard, your heart needs to feel at ease. What? Does my heart not feel at ease? What does that even mean? What does that even mean? So I got really quiet, had my eyes shut. And I focused on my heart. And I'm used to doing that because I did the Mastin Kip Claim Your Power book 6 months before that and learned all about connecting with your heart in that way. And so I connected with it and I was like, ooh, yeah, it feels a little bit tied up. Like, what's that about? And I heard, again, it just needs to feel at ease and the pain will go. I'm like, no, really? Okay, I'll do it. I'll do anything. And as always, I will commit to it. If I get a potential answer, I will do it, even if it sounds crazy. Hang on. Getting a sore throat. I always drink stupidly and then accidentally choke. So, I shouldn't say stupidly. It's not stupid to accidentally choke every time. It's probably because of the garostoical joint that clicks in my throat, which is a whole other story. But not really to do with any of this. Anyway, sorry, I am terrible at digressing. Yeah, and we're at quite a critical part in this story, aren't we? I'm hands on sink and I'm listening. And so I just focused on my heart. And all I can tell you is that I just focused on it and tried to encourage it to feel at ease. Oh, shivers. And then I had a vision of myself in 10 years time. I was 50 or something and my hair's sort of shorter and I just look older and I'm not wearing kind of clothes that I would wear now. I'm sort of wearing a blouse like a 50-year-old. Not that 50-year-olds have to wear blouses, you know what I mean. And I'm in a hot country. I can feel the heat on me and I feel like I have a knowing that I'm walking through India. I'm up for that. It doesn't have to be in 10 years time. I want to go now. And I see myself at complete ease and peace. Now, I have had many, many stretches of time throughout 2018 where I have felt absolute peace. I think it probably started kicking in the summer. I was like, oh my gosh, maybe even September. I don't know. Where I'm so at peace. I could almost laugh down the street, going to pick up my kids. I can't stop smiling. I'm looking up. I am just, and this can last for ages. And then all I have is a little kind of a dip where something happens in life and a bit of fear-based thinking kicks in and I have to do a bit of work to just go, I don't need to think like that. I don't need to believe these thoughts. I don't have to be afraid and I want to feel at peace again. And then it comes back again. So I know that feeling of peace. And so I could completely go, okay, yeah, it's that peaceful feeling. And at that moment, I just had this feeling I think it's gone. So I decided to have no thoughts, no kind of, I just instinctively went, I just have to walk. I have to just turn and walk and absolutely believe. And, I'm trying to say how I didn't have any thoughts, but I had this impulse, just walk. And I did. And I was fine. There was no pain. So I'm walking up and down the stairs. My husband's probably thinking, what's she's doing? Walking around the bedroom, and then I see this big heavy laundry hamper full of washing, which normally I'd be I can't pick that up. I was I'm going to pick it up. I'm going to see if I can do it. Pick it up. I'm fine. I walk up the stairs, walk down the stairs, walk into the living room, say to my husband, this is crazy. I've just had a funny moment in the bathroom and I've heard this voice and I told him what happened and I'm fine. And, going back up and down the stairs, just what else can I do? Walking around to the bins outside all the way around. We have this communal bin, which is sort of around the corner. I'm still okay. Get up the next day, fine. And ever since Christmas Eve, all I have had is a sneaking of pain going and me going, nope, I'm going to focus on my heart and make it feel at ease. Or I have occasionally, because I was doing that loads all through January and all through February. And then I would say towards the end of February, I just weirdly just switched back into the neuroplasticity thing, which is whenever I get that sneaking pain of like, I'm walking along to school, pick up the kids, and then I'm like, oh God, pain. Pain's just sneaking in. Instead, what I do, instead of kind of going, oh God, pain, oh no, I can't have that again, and letting my mind go off on one, instead, I immediately distract myself. Actually, the first thing I do is I follow kind of what I learned in the Explain Pain and Protectometer thing, which is to downplay it immediately. So I will do something like, oh yeah, it's just probably like a pulled muscle, because when you get a pulled muscle, you get pain and you don't panic about it. Even though it's nothing like a pulled muscle, I'll say something like that to myself to believe that that it's nothing to worry about. And then I will quickly distract myself, and I'll either, maybe think about something that requires a lot of thought, a list of something, what we're going to eat tonight, I don't know, something about the children. If I really need to distract myself, I will get on my phone, literally, and a lot of you who follow me on Instagram will have seen this, and I will talk to you guys and go, right, I'm having a pain walk, so I have to distract myself. So I'm going to talk to you, and I go through gratitude, what I'm grateful for. And it's amazing how when I stop thinking about the pain, which it's not that amazing because I know from neuroscience this is how it works, but for you guys it might be interesting to hear that as soon as you stop focusing on it and allowing your mind to catastrophize and do what the mind does, which is go to the very worst thing. If I'm in pain now, then I'm not going to be able to do this tomorrow. If I'm in pain now, then oh my gosh, what if I'm going to be in pain for a whole month? When you don't allow your mind to do that by distracting it, then it's incredible how every single time I do it, pain just goes. And I think that is through spending years now. Spending years now practicing this neuroscience technique of distracting myself. And the other thing that I might do is put a podcast on. And as soon as I'm listening to something intently, that's enough to distract my mind. So why am I telling you all of that? I was connecting something woo to this. Christmas, that was it. Since Christmas, I have not had a flare-up. I just have the odd sneaky bit of pain. And it's interesting, actually, since I've stopped doing the heart, making sure my heart is at ease, and I've just weirdly flipped back the last 3 weeks to the neuroscience, the pain has been more intense and come back more often. So I'm going to go back to doing what I heard and what has been working for me, which is making sure that the heart is at ease. And oh my goodness, I'm going to have to do another podcast about how to get my heart at ease, because the first few times I followed this advice, wherever it came from, I could just do it with my mind. Just imagine your heart's at ease. Right, okay. It's at ease. Okay. Oh, wow, pain's gone. But then that wasn't working. And I realised that everything that I had learned last year in all this sort of self-development and inner work, that a big reason you cannot feel at peace is because you are harbouring resentment, or you haven't forgiven someone or a situation or an event. So then I started going, oh, okay, I will do the forgiveness steps then. Because what I was finding is that when I was finding the unease in my heart, I was quite often able to pinpoint it. Either it would just be obvious, or I would just say to myself, what's been going on recently which has made me feel not at ease? What conversation have I had? Or what situation is happening that's making me feel a bit meh? And then I would go, oh, well, I know better than this. I know I have to actually deal with this and have different thoughts. So then I will go down a forgiveness thing that, again, came to me through morning pages. It wasn't my stuff. I had the most incredible, cryptic set of instructions this one day about dealing with not feeling great about situations and stuff. And since then, whenever I have a thing that I'm like, I can't get past this person has annoyed me too much, or this situation has been too hurtful, or this has been too frustrating, or, what have you. And it's nearly always about me actually projecting onto people, not the other person doing anything. But it really feels like it. And sometimes it feels like there is nothing, no steps of forgiveness will sort this out. And every time it has sorted it out completely. No going back. So I will have to at some point. Well, it's actually a book that I want to write. So, because it's too powerful just to put in a podcast, and people need to see the steps and see the examples of how I've done it. So, I'll do a book, please. Any book publishers reading, watching, listening? Anyway, so now I'm going to just give you my takeaways. It is 10 steps that basically after all this 1 hour and a quarter of talking, these are the things that I have done. Like I said, who knows what has actually fixed this and brought everything to the point that I'm at now, where, I could go to Centre Parks tomorrow, no issue. I could be on a bike, I could be there for 3 days, and I do not believe I'd have any pain. And if I did, I believe I can sort it out through neuroplasticity, through the heart, through the physio exercises. I don't believe it would be an issue. And then I believe I can sort it out with my mindset. So that is quite an incredible journey. Now, these are the main things. 1, change my diet. I've, adopted this anti-inflammatory lifestyle. Another reason for doing that is, now I'm going to get the science a bit wrong, but essentially it's something like gluten cells mimic thyroid cells. So if you've got a thyroid issue or widespread inflammation and your body is attacking itself, I think what I was told, so forgive me if I'm butchering this a little, that if you've got gluten in your body, you're making that autoimmune attack happen more often because it's going to try and attack the gluten. And when it does, because gluten mimics thyroid cells, it's killing the thyroid cells too. I think I've got that a bit wrong. But essentially, you get the idea, hopefully. So 2 is that from all the mindset stuff I've learned, what I have done a lot, and it really helps, is just accept the pain when it happens. So like I said, when I get a twinge when I'm walking along, I accept it. I don't panic about it. I don't attach any emotion to it. I'm very, very aware to not get caught up in it. Don't, like, as Michael A. Singer would say with about sort of thoughts that don't serve you, don't touch them. Don't touch them. So I try and have that approach. And I tell myself what I know my brain needs to believe, even if it's a complete lie. Like, oh, it's just going to be a pulled muscle, and pulled muscles feel horrible, but there's nothing wrong with that. If you go to the gym and you go, I think I pulled a muscle, you don't, sit there going, oh God, well, I haven't been able to walk tomorrow. Oh God, everything's going to have to get cancelled. My life is over. I'm not going to walk for 6 months. You don't do that, do you? You go, I've got a pulled muscle. Ouch. But you don't set off the chronic pain cycle because your brain doesn't perceive it to be a threat. So I have to tell my brain it's not a threat, and I just make up something that is non-threatening. And I just tell myself that's all it is, and I just let it go. And that takes an awful lot of practice. And if you read the Explain Pain book and the Protectometer, it will tell you more about how to do that. Yeah, I've talked to you about how I distract. So I accept it. And there was another thing that I wanted to say about that. Have I written that down? Oh, no, I have. I'll get to that later. So yeah, that's about accepting the pain. I've got another one, which is number 10, which is accepting the as is of the situation. We'll get to that. So number 3 is meditating. Since finally agreeing to meditate, a year after my physio told me it was an incredibly important part of this healing process, I found that it just among all the other incredible benefits, when we're talking about chronic pain, the main benefit I find is it reigns in my mind. So minds are very much all about fear-based thinking. Check out Dr. Shefali Tilsbury. I think that's how you say her last name. Dr. Shefali, anyway. She talks about how our minds are programmed to have fear-based thinking in the most eloquent way. I don't know if eloquent's the right word, and I'm using the word eloquent maybe in a wrong way. But anyway, out of all the people that talk about fear-based thinking just being how we're all programmed, I have found her to be the best at explaining it so that I can understand it. So maybe check out her if you have never heard of the concept that our minds are just constantly spotting fear everywhere and going over the top and going to the worst case scenario all of the time. And that is incredibly important, and a huge part of chronic pain is that the mind has gone off and it's spiraling, and therefore the brain feels like it has to protect you, and then it gets into this cycle and it just can't get out of it unless you do things like this. And so meditating also, so it reigns in my mind. It also just gives me a calm and steady state of being. If I meditate in the morning, I feel all day like I'm just making the right decisions, and that when things flare up, I'm not reactive, I'm just like, okay, let's deal with it. So that obviously makes sense that is really helpful when you have pain creeping in. And obviously, from meditating, you get that connection with your inner voice. That's the only way it can be heard. If you're quiet, then you get all, focusing. Number 4 is, in addition to that, morning pages. I write my morning pages. For those of you that don't know what they are, definitely check out Julia Cameron's book, as I mentioned before, The Artist's Way. It's basically where you dump 3 pages of writing, like your mind. So you dump whatever thoughts you're having in your mind, you don't filter them, and you dump them onto a page for 3 pages. And I found very quickly, and I was listening to a podcast actually today, Rich Rolf was interviewing Brian, I'm going to forget his last name, the guy that co-founded the Billions show. Co-founder or co-writer, whatever it is, same thing probably. And they both do morning pages, and they were talking about it. But what they get out of it sounds to be a bit different to what I get out of it. And what I get is this inner voice just flows out of me and writes the most poetic, beautiful advice to me that I have never thought myself in my head or heard anywhere. So for me, morning pages is a huge part, because I get this incredible advice and knowledge as a thing. So just gotta say it. Number 5, self-education on neuroplasticity. I've covered that a lot. Yeah, I've already said everything on there. 6, faith. Since having this situation with chronic pain, and especially since the moment that my GP said, I am not going to help you, I'm not going to do any tests, it's too hard to diagnose. Basically, you're not worth doing tests on, spending the money on the tests, when we don't deem you worthy of that, and you just have to accept this is your life now. I don't know if I said that earlier, that was the words. Thankfully, my reaction to that was no, I'm not going to accept that. And I had faith that I was going to get better, or I was going to figure out how to live a fulfilling life despite the pain. And I think having that faith that this wasn't what I was sent to earth to do, to be in terrible pain and lie flat all day and not really have much joy apart from my beautiful children and my husband and that kind of thing. I decided that was not going to be my life, and I had absolute faith that I would get out of this, or at least have figure out how to have a fulfilling life. So I think faith is a really big part of it. I think, again, that's your mindset, isn't it? Getting into the right space to then be able to be open to these different things. Whereas I think if I'd just been head in hands, why is this happening to me? I can't cope, and that kind of thing. I would be too, inwards to be able to be open enough to see all these possibilities around me and to have these things come in, because I think these opportunities get presented to you, and it's just up to you whether you're awake enough to notice them a lot of the time. So where did I get to? I feel like I'm going to sneeze. I've never sneezed on a podcast before. Don't know why that would be an issue. We'll have a drink of water again. Sorry. Okay, so number 6 was faith. Number 7 is talking to people. Like I mentioned earlier, a lot of getting some answers were talking to people, and other people leading me to something else that I need to look into. So I don't know about you, but I've been very much brought up in a culture that you don't talk about personal stuff ever. And that has not served me, I've realised. And since I've been incredibly open, I'm doing like this podcast now, how flipping open and authentic can you be when you're just ready to just lay on the line, I've had a spiritual awakening. I had a crazy dream. This is my health issue. But since being horribly honest in a way, I still have moments where, I walk into the playground at school and somebody's like, oh, I've been listening to your podcast all day, and they start referring to things. I'm like, oh yeah, I talk about that stuff. I essentially write a diary and go, here you go, have a read. And but as weird as that seems from my cultural upbringing, being like, you don't do that, and societal conditioning, it has only ever served me to actually do that. Only good things have come of it. And I think because, when you are just learning, like I'm just learning, like I've said 100 times probably, and probably annoying you with it now. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not saying this is what the answer is. I'm just sharing. And so I think that by talking to people and just sharing, you can't really go wrong doing that. You're not telling anybody how to do anything. You're just what's the word I'm looking for? It's a really important word. Connecting. You're connecting with other people. And I think that is a huge part of the human experience, which I have been totally missing out on through fear-based thinking. So number 8, walking. This is a huge part of what my physio told me to do and what comes out of the neuroplasticity advice that I read about. And obviously there are other things on neuroplasticity. Dr. Joe Dispenza, it's funny, I came across him in the summer and thought, oh, his story's amazing, absolutely love it. And never remembered anything that I'd heard in this podcast. And then I listened to the podcast again recently and I was like, this is incredible, absolutely transforming. And then when I got to the very end of it, like an hour into the podcast, I realised, oh, I've heard all this before. But obviously before it didn't resonate as much because I wasn't ready. Whereas now I'm ready and I'm actually super, super interested in his stuff. So his stuff is kind of is taking the scientific, it feels like he's taking the scientific neuroplasticity stuff I'm talking about and probably a whole bunch of other things that I've forgotten. And then adding the spiritual side of things. I think that's the right word, but more of the kind of woo stuff, things that make your eyebrows go, and putting them all together in this incredibly powerful thing. So when I'm saying, number 9 was educating myself on neuroplasticity, knowing what I know now, if I was advising someone right now what you need to look into, I'd be like, take it higher, go to Dr. Joe Dispenza and people like him and look at that kind of thinking. And, other people like I mentioned earlier, like Louise Hay, her books, she has a book called You Can Heal Your Body. And in it, it's a very short book. It is, because her thinking, again, forgive me if I've got this wrong because I'm reading a lot of books, is basically, no illness. There's no such thing as illness. It's all created by your thoughts or beliefs, something like that. And so she has this book which shows not every single, but tons of ailments and illnesses and what really she thinks the reason is for that. And when I look at anything like the thyroid and the autoimmune disease and all sorts of things like that I've had, it is spot on. It is spot on historically, from my childhood, from my upbringing, all that kind of stuff. It is spot on. And even when, my husband and I made a massive decision recently, and immediately my mind wanted to have a field day with it. And I got this pain in my foot, which was insane. And I just thought that night, I'm just going to look up pain in foot. And what was it? Fear of stepping out into the future. And I'm like, oh my goodness, again, it's correct. And then there was another thing that I was, my mind was having a bit of a worry about something, and I had this streaming cold. And I'm pretty sure it was that when I looked it up, it was, again, like your thoughts are running away with you. Like, oh my goodness. So, I have found it only to be helpful to look into these very out there kind of thoughts. So that was on the neuroplasticity, like not just that, there's other things too. And also on that point, I had written this down to share, and this is a good point, is that when I was learning about neuroplasticity, and again with mindset and everything, when you are learning something and it's working, but you find yourself falling out of it and going, oh, I've slipped back and I am letting my mind worry and that kind of thing. What I find really helpful is, and it's a really obvious thing to say, but I'll say it anyway, is then I would look up podcasts where these two guys that wrote the Explain Pain book are being interviewed. And, Professor Lorimer Moseley, he has had his own experience with chronic pain. So hearing him talk about how he had what I'm experiencing now, and he has come through it, through doing these different things, just boosts that faith that this is going to work. And tips my fear-based thinking into it's all calm and it's all fine and everything's good. So yeah, whenever I feel like I'm slipping out of a great mindset, I will go and listen to somebody who's talking about having a great mindset in whatever area that is. Okay, and number 10 was to accept the as is. That's the other thing that has really, really helped me with this journey. So on days that I get flare-ups, I haven't thankfully had this for like a year, but in that kind of that year, 2017, I suppose it was, I think, didn't I say? Yeah, where I was getting better, but it was very much like this. I was having a lot of flare-ups, even though the trajectory was generally going in the right direction. On the days that I will have maybe gone from being able to do whatever I want to do, doing like a walk for an hour around a lake and go, oh, I'm better. And then I'd wake up and be like, oh gosh, I can't move. I'm in so much pain when I'm walking and I can't sit and it's awful. I would accept it. And that, I think, is a real critical part in, again, controlling your mind. Or not so much controlling your mindset, i.e. not allowing your thoughts to hijack your body. So letting your thoughts create physical pain. It's a bit like David Goggins. What did I hear him say the other day? Don't let fear hijack your mind. And I'm like, yes. And in the chronic pain thing, for me, it was don't let my mind hijack my body through having fear-based or pain thoughts or, really fixating on the pain and worrying about it. And then that creates more, that gets the cycle going. Oh, brain, I've got to now protect her because she's in pain. So I've got to pump out more pain so she stops what she's doing and calms down. But the brain doesn't realize, you're fine, really. It's just your mind overdoing it. So accepting it as is. And on days where I would have those really big flare-ups, I would just go, I accept this. I will get people to pick up my children if I can't do it. And I will accept that, even though that's not what I want. I have just realised every time the screen goes dark, I touch it here, but it almost looks like I'm giving you a little, and I'm not. But there'd be no issue if I was, but I feel like I need to tell you I'm just making this. I didn't need to say that. So I would cancel, anything that was going on that day with work. I just accept it. I can't do it. I'm going to just allow that as is. I'm going to have a hot Epsom salt bath because that is something that always makes a big difference to my pain, and just is relaxing. I know it's good for me, so my mind thinks that's a really good thing to do, which helps bring the pain down. And again, just allow. No catastrophizing allowed. Just allow. I think I've talked about all this on the last bit. Yeah, the last thing really to say is that, and this is a good way to round up the whole thing. So those are the 10 things. Sorry, I took quite a long time. It took 15 minutes to give you the 10 things. I almost feel like I now just need to give them in bullet points. Maybe I'll put them in the show notes because I'm sure you've got thinking by now, I need to get the dinner on or whatever time of day it is. Anyway, a big sort of final thing to conclude this, sorry, I've said that twice in a row, haven't I? That's annoying, is that whenever I get a challenge, and again, this has come from all the stuff I learned last year and the mindset and the inner work and the self-development and things. Whenever I'm given a challenge like pain, I now look at it and go, is this trying to teach me something? Is there a lesson in this somewhere for me? Because I believe everything happens for a reason, even though we can't always understand, and we may never in our human experience understand what that reason could possibly be because it's just so... But I really do, at this point, believe everything happens for a reason. And whenever I ask myself, what might I be? What might the lesson be here? I nearly always figure it out and go, oh, it's that again. It's that old story that I've been trying to work through, poking its head up, and it's my job to deal with it and get rid of it. And I also look at it and go, is there an opportunity to grow here? Because I've really found that with every challenge, there is usually growth on the other side of it. If you can push through the challenge, if you can deal with it and look at it and accept it and allow it and change your mindset, on the other side of that, there's going to be growth, isn't there? Because you've dealt with it. You haven't crumpled and crumbled as a result of it. And even if none of that is real, even if you want to say, it's not challenges, it's not lessons, it's just awful, then I just wanted to share that if you're thinking that and you're right, by having this mindset and adopting this mindset, it reduces my suffering. And that cannot be a bad thing. And it stops me from having those, why is this happening to me kind of thoughts. I just go, okay, there's possibly a lesson here. What could that be? What can I learn from this? How can I grow from this? And by taking this approach, it means I look at life completely differently. Instead of seeing just constant bumps in the road and making them feel like boulders, and that they're just sort of one after another, and that it's all against me, and it's, I've never really had an it's all against me sort of point of view, but I certainly did kind of have, I don't need this at the minute kind of thoughts. Whereas going, okay, what might this be trying to teach me Is there a lesson here? Have I been trying to work through something and now this is a little test maybe? I don't really know if the universe sends tests, but you can see what I'm saying. But whenever I do have those thoughts of, is there something I could be learning here? I always come up with something. I've said pretty much before, but I think actually I always do come up with, and it usually is, it's an old story that I've worked through. And if you want to think about how do you figure out stories and old stories and things, I learned a lot of that in the Mastin Kit book, Claim Your Power. And once I did that and realised where I was giving my power away and what stories and beliefs I had created and was living by, when I have these different challenges, it nearly every single time will be an old story coming up. I'm like, oh, great. So this is an opportunity for me to get rid of that old story. And I see it now as I take a leap over the boulder and I go so much further. And then I carry on and there's another bump in the road and there's another one. And I suppose as well, just to finish up on, I have come to believe very much recently that I feel like there is a temptation in life to just think the point of life is to get security and to not have anything to worry about. And to do that, I need money. So I'm going to work really, really, really hard, possibly doing something I absolutely hate to get loads of money, because then I'm not going to have to worry about anything and I'm going to have my freedom to do anything that I want. I don't know if that rings a bell. But since I have changed that completely and I look at life now more as, and I probably am not going to get this quite what I believe right because I feel like I need to think about it first because I'm dyslexic and my thoughts are a bit like fireworks. They come out at the same time and it's hard to kind of gather them all up and put them into a nice sort of linear sentence. But I feel like life actually is never, ever, it's not possible for it ever to be easy. So it doesn't matter how much money you earn or how many precautions or procedures or whatever you put in place to try and protect yourself, you are going to constantly hit these hurdles and these bumps in the road. And that since accepting and allowing that, okay, this is just one of those times. Like at the moment, we've got a big thing going on in our lives. We've suddenly got to move house. And we knew that it would come at some point, and suddenly it's happened. And then the house that we found is empty and we've got to move in it within 2 weeks. From the day of going, let's look for houses, right? We need to do this. We've actually got to move. To like, actually, you can have this house, but you've got to be in 2 weeks. And that, my mind could have a field day with, I've got so much on at the moment with work and it's not so much on. It's more, I've got so many plans and I'm in that space. I can get done what needs to be done in good time. But I wanted to be doing something else. My ego or my mind was like, no, this isn't good timing for me. I don't want this right now. And, but now I have the mindset of, I can just allow anything to happen. And if something comes along that's a challenge, I can go, oh, okay, I was expecting a challenge because I know that life is never going to become completely easy. I'm not gunning for that. I'm not wanting and pulling in, go on, give me hassle. But in listening to really, really successful people, I listen to loads of podcasts, like I've said, I'm beginning to hear more and more how, oh, wow, it took that much growth and obstacles to get to where you are now, and you still have them now. It's just how you deal with them is different. So now I've got that mindset of there will always be challenges, because without challenges you're not growing. And the point of life isn't to finally achieve, it's all easy, I've got enough money, or I've achieved the dream, whatever it might be, whatever your dream is, the career, the house, the husband, the wife, the family unit, whatever. So now it's all going to be fine. That just, to me now, just seems laughable. Like, it's never going to be finished. You're never going to go, oh, life is now perfectly fine and I can calm down and I can now just enjoy myself. So yeah, I don't know if that helps. Like I said just then, all that came out like a bit of a firework all at one point, and I don't feel like I've kind of summed it up and gone, that is truly what I believe in. But I hope that all that blurbling, we've now been going for an hour and 40 minutes, helps you guys. I will do a post on my Instagram feed that will pertain to this episode, so that if you've got any comments, I really would love to hear them. Don't worry if you disagree with me, it's fine. And if you do agree with me, yay! Let me know. I want to have a conversation on these things. It's not that I want to have one. I want to create the opportunity for people to talk about these things and to hear other people's experiences like my own, because I think that there's just huge growth there for other people to hear something. If just one person hears this and goes, oh my gosh, I'm going to try this, and it changes their pain or something else, then it's totally worth doing all this. And I don't know why I'm saying that. Basically, if you've got anything that resonates from this, please share it. I see my community over on Instagram as a community. Let's all support each other. Let's all share our experiences and ideas. And, because, life is full on and it is an incredible journey. And if we can help one another and push one another along, so you go from feeling like you're just hitting walls all the time to like I feel now, like I'm just leaping over boulders, and it all feels very joyous, even if it's hard. If I can help you guys do that, and if other of you can chime in and help everyone, then isn't that a lovely thing? So thanks for listening, and that's it for now. Bye. Where's the stop button? Hey, this is ridiculous. I've just realised I've missed off a really important part of what I was going to say, which was when I saw my functional doctor today and we looked at my results, and we found, like I said, that my my antibodies had, on one of the levels, had gone from 699 down to 0. I have none of those antibodies anymore. And the other one has reduced wildly down to just 40 or 44 or something. That she said, well, essentially what we're looking at is you have reversed your autoimmune disease. I've got this teeny tiny little bit of it, but essentially I almost don't have it anymore. And she expects by our next appointment, which will be in 6 months, that she'll be saying, if it continues like this, where's it gone? And that is quite miraculous. It's quite miraculous just to have what we had today, but to completely get rid of it as we expect it to, and that I'll probably be able to come off thyroid medication, maybe not next time, but maybe the time after that, is pretty incredible. So yeah, I should have mentioned that, right? I think that's it. There might be more add-ons as people are sending me messages now saying, can you talk about this and that? Somebody else just a message saying, can I talk about what motivates me? Ali, thanks for that question. I think I've probably covered it in that if you're talking about, to get rid of the food that doesn't serve me and creates inflammation, that's all down to the work that I did with my therapist, Jacqueline Hurst, around disordered eating, and releasing me from any kind of restrictions around food. And then, everybody does ask, like, how do I be so upbeat and motivated? I just have the most amazing mindset from everything that I learned last year. And I'm still learning. I'm not perfect. Nobody is perfect. I don't suppose anybody gets this amazing mindset and has it all the time. But yeah, it comes from knowing better through experiencing, putting into practice, amazing mindset. What do you call them? Hacks? And doing them and just sticking to them because I know that they serve me. And so, I don't know, once you've got a hold of your mind, well, actually, I haven't, since getting hold of my mind, I haven't had any kind of really full on tests. Don't send me one. No, I've said that. I'd like to say, I was going to say, well, I think now I've got a hold of my mind, I almost can't unknow what I know. I think I'll be fine no matter what came along. That's a really naive thing to say, isn't it? So yeah, let's see what life brings. At the moment, anything that comes along, like you've got to move house in 2 weeks, another big part of it, should I even go into this right now? Maybe I will, is that I have to, in order to be able to afford the new house, which isn't like some crazy dream home or anything. We were lucky in that our landlord in our current property never put the rent up in 10 years. So we have been paying way below the going rate for 10 years. And so... my point being, in having to afford this, giant extra bit of rent for not really much more than what we already have, because we have to move because our landlord died, I have to get rid of this. Studio's got to go. And so that could be a big thing. That could be a thing that would make my mindset go off. It could make my mind really, really, an ego. Couldn't my ego have a big, big problem with that and be like, how can I be this Instagrammer who has this studio and teaches people stuff and actually doesn't have a studio anymore? I could go on a field day, but because I know better, I know that life is always working for me. I know that if I'm in a position where it just feels like what I have to do is give up my studio, that is the best thing I could do. And it's what I need. It's going to be good for me. I already know that what I want to do this next 12 months is work on these online courses that I have been promising you guys I will put out there and give you every bit of knowledge I have about how I've got to where I've got to with my career, with Instagram, mindset, everything. Well, to be able to do that, I need to just sit down and work. And so I want to do that for the next 12 months. And so I guess another big part of it, to answer the question of how I maintain this kind of vibe, I have faith that when I need a studio again, it will appear. Because this studio was just offered to me out of the blue. And the one before that was just, again, out of the blue. Someone said, oh, you mentioned you needed a studio? Oh, there's a thing. Oh, and then I get it. Very flowy. And since having this mindset and having this faith that life is always working for me, things just float. Like with this house, everything has flowed. That's why it can happen in 2 weeks' time. And that, even though I knew for like a year, at some point you're going to have to go. And we decided to not react with fear and go, oh, let's go on our own terms and not get kicked out. We decided to wait until we literally got the call, like the signs going up outside the house. Like, oh, right, okay, we've got to go then. And yes, so that's it's not I don't have to motivate myself to have this mindset. I just have it because I fill my mind with the right thoughts and I educate myself on how to have great thoughts and all that kind of thing. And I think that's all the experience that I've had in this, which has only been like a year, all I can really tell you on that. Yeah. Okay. I digressed again for 5 full minutes, but hopefully that was helpful to some of you. And once again, thanks for listening. Let's see if there's going to be any more of these. Is this going to be it?